Good evening, folks. I'm honored to be with you all tonight. My name is Gary Wimmer, and I have a pretty interesting story to tell y'all. And I'm not going to tell you everything because I wrote a book on it, and the book has a lot more detail than I can go through. But I first of all give you a little history about myself. It'll make a little more sense. I was the third of 7 boys. I have 2 older brothers and 4 younger. And my 2 older brothers, ironically, were born on December 8th, 45 and 46. And I remember my mother always saying, the day of the Immaculate Conception. I don't think it was an Immaculate Conception, but she wants to look at it that way. Or the day after Pearl Harbor. And there were a double and a triple Sagittarius. So in 47, here I come along in November, a hypersensitive Scorpio, and there's a lot of reasons my personality is what it is because of 2 very dominant older brothers who I love dearly, but they're Donald Trump squared sometimes. Anyway, so I grew up, I was raised Catholic. At a very young age, I was going to be a priest until puberty hit, and then I nixed that idea pretty quickly, as I'm sure a lot of Catholics do. In college, I was studying electrical engineering. Well, first I started playing music in high school. I started playing guitar. Freddie King, B.B. King, Ray Sharp, Jimmy Reed. You know, of course, learning Ray Charles and the Beach Boys. And when the Beatles came out, I started learning every song they did. So all the way through high school and college, I played in bands, mostly as the lead guitar player and a backup singer. And I never had a very good voice. And I'll tell you a little interesting thing about that. So I went to college at Texas Tech studying electrical engineering in the 60s, and as a musician I started getting more and more radical and anti-war and reading a lot about psychic ability. Some lady turned me on to Edgar Cayce and Madame Blavatsky and later Ruth Montgomery and a bunch of psychics, and I started reading a lot of information. Actually, the lady had done a horoscope for me. I met her at the student union, and I was electrical engineering, and I didn't necessarily believe all that, but I was curious. And a week later, when she brought my horoscope back and told me so much about myself, it really blew me away. As an engineer, going, how the hell does this work? Piqued my curiosity. She said I had a lot of natural psychic ability. Well, I knew I had a lot of curiosity, no doubt there. I got out of college. I was 1A. I applied for conscientious objector status because I was really opposed to the war. And even as an engineer, I was an electrical engineer. I probably could have got a deferment if I'd have worked for a defense industry, but I didn't want to go work for a defense industry. I ended up working 2 years at the Austin State School out here as a conscientious objector. And during this time, I started getting more and more interested in psychic ability. And started giving readings with simple methods, mostly with a deck of cards. A little bit of palmistry, a little bit of tarot, but oftentimes it took too much memory to remember all that. I wanted something I could just feel. So I was playing music, started playing music professionally. Well, I started actually in high school and in college, but after I got out of college and served 2 years as a conscientious objector, I traveled a little bit and then started playing music. And the reality of having a mediocre voice really set in, you know. It really did. There's a lot of bands I wanted to play with or be a part of, and they wouldn't have me. They could always get a better singer. So I went through a lot of depression in my early 20s, wanting to play music and realizing I just didn't have one of the most important things. And I was always studying more about psychic ability. It just got my curiosity. I started giving readings. In 1977, I was playing with this band. We were doing a lot of traveling, and I was ready to get off the road for a while. I needed a break. So I quit the band, and I was living in a duplex with 2 other guys. Both of them I knew. They were both Aquarians. One I'd known longer, but didn't know as well. I called him Mark in the book. I changed the names of all the people, except my brothers. Brendan was another guy. He was a couple years younger than me. They were both, like I said, Aquarians, and I had moved in 6-7 weeks earlier, and we went out on the road again. So all of a sudden I'm off out of the band, and I'm living at this house. And The first night we got back from tour, I brought my equipment in, I was talking to my roommates, and everything started feeling kind of strange. In fact, it's felt strange all day. And my roommates went to bed, and the guy and his girlfriend, who were neighbors down the street, I thought I heard him say, "Can I borrow your vacuum?" And I didn't say anything because it sounded like he kind of mumbled it. And a few minutes later he said, "Can I borrow your vacuum?" And I said, "Didn't you just say that?" "No." I said, "Okay." So I got my vacuum, and I thought I heard him say, "Do you have some attachments?" And I said, "What'd you say?" And he said, "Nothing, I didn't say anything." So yeah, a moment later he asked me for some attachments, which I supplied. I went to bed that night thinking about that strange premonition, and I couldn't sleep at all. And I started having all these feelings of something very different was happening, and I didn't know what. But in the morning, my roommate walked out and got the newspaper, and as he's walking back in, for a split second, I saw the paper through his eyes. And it was 1977, it was an article about Carter. I can't remember the article, but it was on the headlines, and I was startled, and he brought the paper in, read it for a moment, threw it down on the table, and I'm just staring at it. I'm like, wow, how did I see those headlines a minute ago? He asked, "Are you okay?" I said, "Yeah." That afternoon, he went to work. My other roommate went to work. I was setting up stuff around my house, unpacking boxes, and every time I touched something, it would feel like I was transported back to the time when that person gave it to me. And these were not just kind of light deja vus. I could smell things that were around the environment, and I could feel it. And a couple times I was sure that the person was behind me. And I turn around, they're not there. And this is getting kind of strange. That night we went to Soap Creek Saloon. I don't know if you all remember that. It used to be around here about 30 years ago. You remember it, don't you, brother? So we went out there that night, and I noticed I was picking up stuff about people all the time. For example, that afternoon I walked to the store and I could hear everybody's thinking. And no matter what everybody was talking about, it seemed like symbolically they were telling each other how to get back to the light, or who they were, or how they got here. And it was all, that ultra deep meaning was all lost in simple conversation. So I was starting to read things from a different level. And I don't know if I was imagining them or feeling them, but it felt too real. It felt like all of a sudden I'm starting to feel and hear the subconscious of people around me. That night at Soap Creek Saloon, before we walked in, I stopped at a place by the door because I felt this strange sort of feeling, like a premonition. Didn't get anything, walked inside, listened to the music for a while. I was getting claustrophobia because people were walking by and I was picking up all sorts of stuff about them. Unsolicited. I didn't want this. I didn't know where it came from. It's only a day or two into it, and I don't know where the off button is. I went back to the bar, sat down at the bar, and thought, boy, I need a break. I closed my eyes, and all of a sudden, I'm outside the bar in that exact place that I had felt a moment earlier walking in. And I saw these people, and they walked right through me. And I opened up my eyes, startled, and I'm back in the bar seat. I had just transported myself outside, and the door opened, and these people came in, dressed exactly as I'd seen just a moment ago. And I thought, this is getting bizarre. So I tried this a couple times, and sure enough, every time I could imagine myself being transported out there and see who's coming in next and what they're wearing. And I was actually picking up their names and all sorts of stuff about them. Because it had gotten so intense by the second and third day that I couldn't be neutral about it. I couldn't pretend it wasn't happening. It was either affecting me or I was having to affect something or pick something up. There was no neutral. My roommate came in from the back of the bar, and I was betting him money I could tell what the next folks come through are dressed like. And I pulled it off, and he thought I'd cheated, had been outside. No, I've been right here. Ask all these people. Next day, things got stranger. And by the third and fifth day, I couldn't even imagine what normal life was like. I was picking up things about everything. I'd hear stuff on the radio, and it would all be either things about me or about higher consciousness. Even if they're selling soap, it didn't matter what was going on. It was all symbolic. I kind of knew what the DJ was going to play next. I could feel all these premonitions about things, and The 5th or 6th day, one of my roommates was very concerned about it, a guy named Brendan. The guy named Mark, he just thought I was nuts. He had no tolerance for anything. And so I kind of confided in Brendan. I needed to talk to somebody because he noticed what I was doing, picking up how people were dressed before they'd walk in. We went out to a restaurant called the Filling Station. It was up on Barton Springs Road, and we're talking, and he's asking me how this is going because he's been around me for 2 or 3 days now. And I said, it's too hard to explain. I'll just give you an example. And he said, what? And I looked over to the farthest corner of the restaurant and saw 2 ladies. One of them facing kind of that way, the other one facing away from me, just brunette hair. And I said, I'm going to have that, glance at those ladies. And he looked around real quick. And I said, I'm going to have this brunette write me a letter. He said, about what? I said, I don't care. I'm just going to have her write me a letter. Well, halfway through the meal, I'm still thinking about that. And I'm asking this brunette to just write me a letter, something real harmless. You know, my roommate's eating. He'd forgotten all about this. And about 10 minutes later, her and her friend walked by, and she threw a napkin down on the table. And in big, bold letters, it said, why are you doing this to me? Now that freaked me out. It freaked him out. And this is going on and on and on. I start feeling the presence of, I called them the monitors because they seemed to name themselves the monitors. They were like some sort of guardian angels. They were watching me. I could feel them. I couldn't see them. I couldn't hear them, but I could feel them like in shifts check on me like I'm okay. And it gave me some level of confidence in this world that was now completely different from anything I'd ever imagined. And like I said, I couldn't turn this off. So the feeling of these monitors watching me or having some sort of influence over me, protectiveness or something, was encouraging, but the phenomena I was going through kept increasing. This book, A Second Eternity, takes through a whole 8 days of this insane, maddening, crazy, beautiful, psychic, reading the signs voyage I went on. I'll give you another example in there. One time my roommate Mark, who is a medic in Vietnam, we were talking about pain, and he was talking about guys getting shot up in Vietnam, and out of the clear blue I blurted out, yeah, well, if they knew, they could prevent pain from happening. And he, what the hell are you talking about? We had boiled some tea. There was a pan over there. We put some water in for some tea, and it was boiling. And, you know, the white stuff around the pan, the minerals were boiling. And so in the middle of this conversation, I realized I'd kind of blew his mind. He said, what are you talking about? I said, well, if they had control over their brains, it's chemistry. If you could control that, you could control your thoughts, you would not feel pain. He said, that's the most bullshit I've ever heard. You hadn't seen people with their guts being blown out in Vietnam. And I looked over at that pot of boiling water, and it seemed to say to me, along with the monitors, no, just show him. So I picked up this boiling water real quickly and said, no, watch. And I poured it right over my head. It's the only time in my life that I've ever felt water the exact same temperature as my body. It was the most phenomenal experience. It was only wet. And I've never in my life, of course it's boiling. How did it not burn me? They're grabbing me, and the other roommate grabs the water and cusses me out, and Brendan drags me back to the bathroom and rips my shirt off, and I didn't feel it. I wasn't red. The whole floor is steaming up. But this was getting nutty. People don't go in normal life and pour boiling water on their head to prove some point about how much your brain can cut off pain. But it seemed so normal at the time. So this went on and on and on. And there's a lot of experiences I went through in that first week. I had never been so scared in my life and never felt so enlightened at the same time. It was absolute beauty and luxury, picking up everything I could put my mind to. I could just think about something and the answers were just apparent. I just didn't know what to do with it or how to cut it off. At the same time, it was terrifying. And by the 8th day, I decided to go take a walk. I'd frustrated my roommates enough. I'd scared people. A lot of my friends were very concerned. I was too. In fact, my roommates for a couple days had tried to figure out how to sneak me a downer or something, because I didn't sleep for a whole week. 8 days of very little sleep. Once in a while, I'd kind of close my eyes and meditate. But and during this week, I got these words: verification. It's a process I had to continue to verify through some internal relationship that I was still here. And it felt like everybody has a candle of life and existence, and right now it's my duty to carry this. And if I fell asleep, what if the whole universe collapsed? It'd be my fault. I mean, that's the most ridiculous degree of responsibility. You can't even imagine it. But it seemed very apparent to me that could be true. You know, there's a couple of times that I thought I was Jesus Christ reincarnated, and it made perfect sense. Of course, a musician in Austin, who would ever expect that? Right? But then I'd go, wait, I can't handle this, man. If I chose it, if it's true or what, I can't handle it. I can barely walk down the street without just feeling overwhelmed at everything. But that thought made sense to me later. By the 8th day, I went outside for a walk at night, and it was peaking. I was so terrified, so intuitive, picking up everything, driven everybody crazy, done all kinds of strange stuff that could be very dangerous to me or not to other people. So I hitched a ride. Well, actually, a guy came over and picked me up. It was a cold night, and before I even got in his car, I knew his name, all about him. Larry Harbour. He was in psychology at UT, and everything he told me was I felt before I even opened the door. So he led me off on 26th Street, and I walked up to Guadalupe and started walking north on Guadalupe by the Varsity Theater. It used to be here, and it was a fairly busy night. It seemed like there was a lot of people on the street. And I had it. I was praying, and I was crying, and I was scared to death, and people all around me are watching me. Because how many people are crying and praying, and you look so frantic and scared, and I wanted to tell everybody to back away from me, like I might blow up and spew me all over the street or whatever. Long story short, within seconds of the most intense fear in my life, I closed my eyes and I'm pouring down tears and I'm praying, and I felt this immediate warmth. I mean, it was like warm, and it was immediate. And it was physically and mentally and emotionally and spiritually, all of a sudden, I was completely warm right after I'd been praying. And I opened my eyes, and there's this huge light above me. And my first thought is, if I had a ladder, I could touch it. It was about 6 feet over my head. It was a physical distance. And it looked like a big spotlight. And I looked around at all these people who were watching me, needless to say, because they didn't know what the hell I was doing. Nor did I. But they didn't obviously see it. They were just still looking at me. I'm thinking, how can you avoid this? So I looked back up at the light again, and this time it turned into a crystal table. It was about 6 feet in diameter. It was about that thick, not that thick or not that thick. It was an actual physical thickness. It looked like it was crystal or plexiglass or something. And then I noticed this light was coming down from the palms of these 7 white-robed angels, guardian angels, they felt like. I couldn't see their faces. They were kind of like a raster on TV, black and white. But boy, they gave me a profound sense of security. And they said, do you trust us? In one big voice. And I said, absolutely. I mean, you're the monitors. I realized these are the guardian angels, and they said, yes, we are. Do you trust us? I said, yeah, well, yeah, but I don't understand what's going on. Can you help me? And you'll understand. Do you trust us? And I'm looking around, and all these people are staring at me, rightfully so, like I'm crazy because I'm talking to something that ain't there as far as their dimension. But it was very clear to my dimension. And they told me in a roundabout way that I was protected. And within seconds, I was hit by a speeding car. I was a pedestrian. And all of a sudden, I'm outside my body. Well, the first thing I remember as the car approached and I started hitting the bumper of it is there was a plexiglass shield like a crystal shield installed between the bumper and me. And it actually felt like that kind of thickness, not there, not there. So when I hit the bumper, the front of the car, my eye had caught the retina of the headlight. And you know how when you close your eyes, that little dot's still there? Well, it turned into a big bang. And it didn't feel like the first big bang or the only big bang. It felt like, well, this is this big bang that I'm in. And all of a sudden, I'm outside my body. And I'm looking down at it being banged around by this car, hitting the windshield and people screaming. And it was kind of humorous because I thought it was me and I wasn't sure. But I got this feeling that once you're outside the body, you kind of realize that what's happening on Earth is what's happening on Earth. I couldn't stop it or prevent it or associate with it. I didn't know if it was me. I mean, and I started expanding in all directions. The most beautiful sensation I've ever had. Like a surface of a balloon, not like an arrow, not going out in one direction, going all out in all directions. And well, the first thing I sensed was seeing the whole Earth from 360 degrees. I saw the North Pole, the South Pole, all the continents at one time because it felt like it was going inside me because I was expanding and somehow I had eyes inside of this non-physical body that was expanding. And I started going past all the planets and they all felt familiar, like I'd been here, I had some relationship with them. And then the galaxies started falling inside me and I expanded more and more. The difference between sequential things and simultaneous things no longer existed. There was no feeling of time. I couldn't tell if things were happening sequentially or simultaneously, and I was just interpreting them sequentially. It's one of the strangest feelings I've ever had. Time doesn't fit into this. And it was just sensation. So I'm expanding larger and larger and larger, and it finally felt like I went through the edge of the universe. And it felt like at that time it was nothing but a thought, you know, like a thought, and it manifested into physical reality. And then I realized that all these stars in the sky, this universe that I had just expanded beyond, was just one of but billions of universes that filled the sky. And as I went outside the edge of the universe, I crossed this level. Things seemed to name themselves. This level of consciousness seemed to call itself the colors. And I interpret it as a level of consciousness that when our soul comes back into the planet, which is how we get to the mother at birth, as our soul collapses from all directions. I was seeing it in reverse. I was going out. But when we collapse in, we pass this realm of consciousness called the colors that allows us to learn how to use our physical senses, including our intuition, but touch, feel, sound, in order to recognize that there is an infinite universe. And the mere fact that the colors give us that sort of connection to go from senses to infinity, we couldn't do it if we didn't have that level of consciousness, along with lots of others that came about by us choosing to use our free will and exist, basically. That's what it is. So anyway, this huge sky of infinite universes, of which I just come out of one, they seem to spin in a big circle, like a tornado, and then they turn into this tube of light, tunnel of light. It's the best explanation there is. It really felt like a tunnel of light. And there was clouds going around. They're kind of like off-white, silver. Seem like they're going around in circles real fast, and I'm just being projected through this tunnel. And by this time, I have no awareness of me, of Earth, of creation, just pure sensation. No feeling of separation, because there's no individual consciousness that I could remember or hold on to at this point. Then it felt like I was projected out of this tunnel into this infinite blue void. Absolutely beautiful. It looked like sky as far as you could see. And I felt instantly that I'm in the mind of God. There's infinite creativity here. There's infinite possibilities. Everything happened or nothing happened. And this infinite level of consciousness has no limit. what would impose a limit on it? It's all possibilities, and it's just one possibility at the same time, and there's no, what's the word, contradiction there, you know. And I felt like I was not observing it, but I was one with it. And I realized, wow, we're all one with it. Everything that's created is one with this infinite mind. And startlingly enough, as I observe this infinite mind, it appears as infinite love. And that's the most incredible thing, how infinite creativity can come from infinite love. It's certainly beyond the laws of physics to explain that. But that's actually what it felt. And most people who've had near-death experiences in some versions say that. When I was watching Through the Wormhole about 5 years ago, and Dr. Eben Alexander, who wrote Proof of Heaven, was talking to Morgan, and he was talking about being at the core, the center of all this creation. And he said it's infinite love. That's the only way you can describe it. And when I heard him say that, I thought, you wouldn't know to say that unless you actually knew that firsthand. So I wrote him a letter the next day, email, right as he was getting his book out, and sent him mine. And I've spoken at some of these conventions in San Antonio last year. But this infinite mind had two choices, basically. It either exists and everything exists, or it didn't exist and nothing would exist. Well, guess which one happened? It existed, everything existed. How, why? It's beyond the rational mind to be able to put it into words or explain. But I was in heaven, and I was loving it, and I was enjoying it, but I didn't have any sense of I. All I knew was I'm in this sensation. And it felt like different parts of the creative process were sort of sweeping over me, like exposing themselves. But at the same time, nothing was separate. But at the same time, everything was separate. If you put the human mind to it, it's a contradiction, you know, because we can't think of everything and nothing, and separateness and infinite connectedness at the same time. It gives you a headache. So anyway, as I was feeling at one with this, somewhere along the line, it's the best way I can describe it, I felt like I was witnessing it instead of being at one with it. And all of a sudden, I'm being pulled away from it. And I didn't particularly know why or where I was headed, but I knew I liked it there, but I didn't get a chance to stay. I was just pulled back away from it. And I use the term in this book, spiritual gravity, because that's what it felt like. I was being pulled somewhere. I didn't know where, but I went through this tunnel of light in reverse, and it still felt good. It was still thrilling, but I knew I was headed somewhere, and I was a little bit apprehensive, you know. Where am I headed? I liked where I was. I saw this infinite sky of universes and was drawn to one particular one. And sure enough, I collapsed into that one, which is this one, and still had very little awareness of myself or where I was headed, but it started becoming more familiar. I'm some individual something. Then we approached the solar system, and then I approached the Earth, and still not aware of a me, but feeling more and more like I'm connected to somebody, something here. I felt like tinges of a musician and a psychic. I thought maybe I know this person. And then I saw my body laying on the middle of Guadalupe Street, like I was 10 feet above it, and it was so clear, that's me. And I immediately jumped back into my body. And the first thing I noticed was this terrified driver screaming, "Man, are you okay? I couldn't stop. I tried to stop. I couldn't." He was just scared to death. Well, where I was just at, this was nothing. Absolutely, it was just a trivial little accident. Let's get over this. And I jumped to my feet, and he's trying to hold me down, and people are screaming and hollering, and I don't feel any pain, none. The car's all banged up. The ambulances came, police came. I was going to go home. I looked around, I thought, well, nobody's hurt. It's too heavy, I'm just going to go home. And someone said, hey, wait, the ambulance is on its way. And I thought, okay, I'll just explain to them what happened and go home. Right. When the cops came and the police came and the ambulance came, and they're all First, when they all arrived, they're looking around for a body on the floor, and I said, I'm the guy you're looking for, and all the people are pointing, yep, it's him, because I didn't know who was hurt. So the cops came up, and the medics checked me out and said, how the hell are you standing the same way you are on your feet, man? Hey, they looked out the car and goes, I don't believe this. And that car hit you? I said, yeah, but I feel fine. Can I just go home? And they're going, no, you can't just go home. And the cops started asking me some questions, and all I could answer was what had happened in the last couple of days and week and where I'd just been. Well, that didn't make any sense to the cops or the police. But they went around and talked to all these witnesses, because I could hear them, I could feel it. I'm still amped up like crazy. I could feel everything. And all the witnesses are telling me, yeah, this guy's talking to something that's not there. And then he, as soon as I jumped to my feet, after the driver was trying to hold me back, I went up to all these people like y'all and said, did y'all see this? These aliens? Well, that didn't sound very good either. You know? And I'm looking at it thinking, boy, this is a true, of course I look completely loony. I would look me too, but what can I do? So that's why I wanted to go home and think about it. Well, they wouldn't let me go home. Took me to the hospital. Couldn't keep me at the hospital. Had one little scratch on my head. They x-rayed me, wasn't hurt. I talked to several different doctors and specialists. How'd this not happen? I said, well, I was protected. I had this shield, and they didn't want to hear any of this. Understandably. And then there's a guy that came marching in, and I'd had premonitions about this guy. In fact, I had premonitions about this whole thing happening. I just didn't know what it was. Days before I saw these red lights and cops and people having control of me or something, and it just like momentary images. I couldn't make any sense of them. But when I'm at the hospital, and when the emergency room people moved me over in a corner because there's nothing they could do to me because I'm not hurt, and when this other guy comes in casual clothes, 40-year-old handsome guy, I knew his name and everything. He was a psychiatrist. I knew all about his family, and he's talking to me saying, how do you know all this? I said, right now, Doc, I know everything, Well, like what? And I explained to him how he and his son the previous weekend had moved all the furniture around. His wife came home and said, no, this ain't cutting. He cut down all this floor space. And I explained it to him in perfect detail. I could see him doing it. As clear as I'm looking at you, you're sure. There was just no hesitancy or no doubt whatsoever. In fact, I kind of wished I could turn it off. I'd had a week of it. Well, he said, I've never seen anything like this. I've heard people talk about these kind of experiences. You're not hurt. We can't keep you in the hospital, but they can't just let you go home. Do you understand? I said, yeah, you don't like people getting hit by cars on Tuesday nights, huh? He goes, no, we got your mental condition. We're going to have to take you to a psychiatric hospital. And I had no problem with that. Really, but they said, well, we can't get you in for a couple of days. We got to get the order of protective custody, and we got to put you in jail. And so they put me in jail and booked me in jail. So one minute, this is all one evening, one minute I'm in heaven, next minute I'm getting arrested by police, and they don't believe my story, which I, of course, can understand. I wouldn't have believed it either. Next I'm at the hospital, of course they don't believe it. Next I'm explaining it to a psychiatrist. And he's probably the closest to believing it. And I'm starting to realize I'm going to have to explain this to a lot of people in the next couple of days and weeks, because they got me legally. They've got me in jail. They're going to commit me to a psychiatric hospital. And I had really no problem with that, because I wouldn't have known what to do with me. And from their point of view, the way I was talking and thinking, I could be a harm to myself and others from their point of view. So anyway, long story short, I went through 10 days at Shoal Creek Hospital. And by about the second or third day there, I got the name Mr. Smiles, because I've been a musician my whole life. I've always been an entertainer. And defending myself against my two older brothers made me a good entertainer rather than a good third base, or target. So I entertained everybody at the Shoal Creek. They had girls there that were like 15, and their parents had put them there because they were sexually active, and their parents wanted them to not have sex, and so they ship them off to Shoal Creek instead of talk about sexuality to them, you know. My roommate was a 12-year-old kid. When I wrote the book, one of the commentaries someone put on Amazon is, I don't know how you could have had a 12-year-old kid. It was a roommate. I worked in the healthcare field for 25 years and they wouldn't have done that. Well, they did. You know, I didn't question him at the time. He was a 12-year-old kid. I looked at him like a younger brother. How cool. You know, and I helped him a lot he had a lot of social upheavals, you know. Brilliant kid, though. I'd play chess with him, and I got to where I was looking at the board like this, because between his intuition and my eyes, he'd go, "No, if you move the king, if the rook there, I'm going to take the knight here. No, if you do that, I'm thinking, I can't even think without this guy picking it up." Now, whether he was picking up or I was broadcasting loud or whatever, it was still, during the hospital for 4, 5, 6 days, I was still highly intuitive about everything. The psychiatrist, I called him Dr. Turner. That wasn't his real name, but it's close. Every time he would come in to see me at a different time of day, they'd kind of drop in unexpectedly. I got to where I could write the time on when he would come in the morning, with it handed to the nurse's station and seal it in an envelope, and he'd come in at 3:25 and, "What's this envelope?" I said, "Read it, you know. It's got 3:25 on it, you know, look at your watch." Well, that's a coincidence. Second day, this is kind of strange. Third day, "I don't want to deal with this anymore, Gary." and he was asking me, you know, I started talking to him about his kids and his wife and his marriage. It's almost like I'm analyzing him. He was a very fundamentalist Baptist by the book psychiatrist, and when I talked about God and reincarnation and infinite creativity, and it just blew his mind. It contradicted everything in his Baptist upbringing. And a lot of things I was able to say and do, even though I fit into the category of manic depressive, because I was in a manic cycle, I was so alert. And I'd helped everybody at the hospital, and everybody called me Mr. Smile. So it's like, I'm not really a threat to anybody, you know. I got out about 10 days later. They have a whole group of psychiatrists, and I said, "Look, I can lie to you, or I can tell you the same story I've been telling you forever. You may not believe it, but here's what happened." And I gave them a short version, and they all agreed that I'm balanced, and they don't understand what happened. They can't explain it. And I kept saying, "You guys are doctors. You need to look into this." The interface between psychic ability and psychic states and infinite mind, and you know, there's all kinds of possibilities. Now people are starting to look into it more. 77, it was like I was a human oddity, and all due respect, I guess I was. About April 1st, before April 1st came by, I started having this started happening again. My roommates called my mother down and her friend, and on April 1st, April Fool's Day, they came and took me back to the hospital. Just took me to Breckenridge because I was going through this again. I was picking up stuff. I wasn't sleeping. I was doing strange things. So this time they put me in Austin State Hospital because my parents said, "We just can't afford Shoal Creek." I don't care where you put me. I'm happy anywhere I'm at. It took about 5 or 6 months for this to really dissipate down to nothing, even though they gave me lithium carbonate in Shoal Creek, and they gave me Thorazine in Austin State Hospital. And I mean, they'd give me a handful of these Thorazines. I was so amped up, I could eat a whole handful of them and still not sleep for 2 or 3 days. And months later, a buddy of mine needed to sleep on, so I took one of these Thorazine and took a little razor blade and shaved off a couple little slices of it. It knocked him out for 24 hours almost. That's how potent the Thorazine is. And I was so amped up, it barely affected me. Months later, I started being able to get back to normal life. In 1997, on February 7th, that's when this happened to me, on February 7th, 1977, about 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago, and 40 years. In 1997, I was living in Europe older in the 90s, and I was playing this bar there. And before we were playing, I'm talking to all the waitresses and having dinner. And I said, y'all want to hear what happened to me 20 years ago? And yeah, so I told them this story, and a couple of them said, wow, man, you ought to write that. So I started the book the next day. I picked up about 5 or 6 years ago, got the police records from the city, talked to a lot of friends, embellished the book where I just have a paragraph before I broke it down into the dialogue and the setting and so forth. What I experienced, I feel like I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet. First of all, never fear death. Never fear death. It's beautiful. Our challenge is here, now. It ain't out there. Number two, we have infinite chances, infinite possibilities. Yep, we're stuck with a certain genes, certain history, certain karma, born in a certain culture, certain religion. So all of us have limitations. But on our consciousness, our spirituality, the way we think, there's no limit. How creative we can become, how loving, how kind, how aware, how good. You know, there's a limit to how many years we'll live or how much French toast we can eat, right? There's no limit to how much we can grow spiritually and psychically and mentally and emotionally. And I saw that so clearly that I realized this is going to help me manage my life. In 1980, 3 years after I had this experience, you know, I had a hard time making a living in music because I was playing in bands I wasn't that proud of. If I was a great singer, I'd get everybody to back me up, but I'm not. I'm one of those sidemen. So in 1980, I got off the road, I decided to teach myself piano. I tinkered around a little bit before in this book, but I'm going to learn all the scales and all the keys, and I started practicing 12 hours a day, literally. I did that for 3 years, from 1980 to about 1983, 84. And somewhere in 83 and 84, I went out to some piano bars, sort of as a joke, just to see if they'd hire me, and they did. And I went, oh God. So next week, I'm in a piano bar that has all these great piano players and great singers, and here I am with half-assed technique and a less than half-assed voice, and they gave me a chance. How am I going to make it float? So I decided I'd be a good entertainer, because I'm not a good singer and I'm not a great player. And moral of my story, within a couple of years, I was a full-time solo player. When you work on what you can work on, instead of worry about what you don't have. I don't have the voice. If I sang like Ray Charles, I'd get all the guys to back me up. But when you make a decision to increase your power and where you can, and I can listen to the notes and duplicate them. I did that with guitar. When you really set your mind to things and you practice, because you have to practice, and you keep up your faith, not only will you probably get what you're shooting for, but you probably get a lot more too, because you're opening up a whole new world of possibilities. And I'm living proof from someone who was so damn depressed in my 20s. Felt like, God, I don't have a chance in music. I mean, I don't want to go work a normal job. I like playing and traveling. I was single, chasing girls, you know, and being different places. And with a half-assed voice, I managed to do it my whole life. And I was never booked up more than a couple weeks in advance, ever. Maybe a month or two when I was in Europe. But I learned from my near-death experience, there's infinite possibilities, and if we plug into them and practice them and put our best, we're probably going to make things work. There's no guarantee except the two things life guarantees are change and death. That's about it. Things are going to change and we're going to die. But between now and then, we have much more power than we believe, and the most powerful use of free will is how you look at things. Because sometimes you can't change the past, you can't change somebody else. Sometimes you can't change your immediate situation, but you can always change the way you look at it. And I learned from my near-death experience that the universe is always talking to us. And I encourage people to think in those terms, because it really is. We're not taught that in high school, we're not taught that in church, but we come from infinite mind, and here we are stuck in one little body with a certain set of genes and history and so forth. feeling somewhat isolated, and in a lot of ways we are. But on the other hand, this is all Maya. It's just the illusion of separateness. And there's a purpose for it. So we all become individual manifestations of infinite mind. And we can only take on so much finite of that in each life, in each person. But the potential to grow and expand and see new things and conquer new territory and be rewarded in life by what you can do as opposed to what you can't do, it's enormous. And I still do readings. I wrote 2 books. One of them is A Second Eternity. It's about my near-death experience. I met a lady in 1980 who did readings by this method called lithomancy. In a nutshell, it involves 16 stones: Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, Mars, Jupiter, Saturn, Neptune, Uranus, and Pluto. 10 planet stones. And 6 on life, love, luck, commitment, timing, and place. And when I do it in person, people drop the stones. I read it like a clock. When I do it over the phone, I have people say drop. I drop it for them, and I read it like a clock the same way. 12, this is the 3rd week, 6th week, 9th week. Everybody who uses psychic ability it's interpreted through a human being, so we all have our own unique little slant, perspective, whatever. And it is an art, not an exact science. But going through my experience taught me how much I can read symbolism, and a lot of what psychics do. In fact, we do it all the time, we just don't realize it. We pick up symbolism. We see symbolism. We just often blow it off rather than investigate it. You know, what's going on? Why do I feel this? Why do I sense this? Because the universe wants you to learn something new, to think outside the box, learn new talents, learn new skills. So that's kind of what I went through, and that's a little bit of my philosophy. I'd be glad to take some questions from all if you'd like.
Questions?
Oh, someone's got to have one good question.
When you said you felt love, is it the kind of love that you love your children, or you? You know, a lot of people don't know what love is.
Oh, and it's hard to know love at that level. It's and the reason I think people who have out-of-body experiences and near-death experiences feel it so profoundly is you're not limited by your human brain. Then,
Are you feeling the love, or are you giving the love?
At the time I was connected with the infinite mind, it felt like I was infinite love, it was infinite love, there was no division. But somehow there is, because I'm personally observing it. But I couldn't explain that in a way that really makes sense. But the infinite love is what actually brought everything into play. How? Why? We could write on that or discuss that forever, or millions of philosophies. But it's so real. It is so real. It's so encompassing.
But is it the kind of love you feel on Earth?
Oh, it's so far beyond that.
Beyond that?
Oh, so far beyond that. Okay. The love we feel on Earth is like trying to, it's the comparison between an ant's intelligence and a human's.
Okay. Is it beyond the love you give to someone else? Like your child? Or
I don't think I can give that degree of love because I'm just not perfected there yet. Does it exist? Yes. Can it exist in a human form? Probably. There's some pretty enlightened, loving, beautiful people on this planet. You know, I'm better than a serial killer, but I ain't perfected. You know, but actually, to find that love in terms that makes sense to a human mind,
yeah, that's right.
It's hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard.
Could I ask a question?
Sure.
Could you talk about how you said when you were in it and you weren't aware of yourself as a separate self, and yet you were having that experience? Is it?
It's hard to explain without the human mind saying, well, that's a contradiction. Yeah, I agree with you. I was at one with it. At the same time, I was obviously, as I was saying, somehow kind of getting a personal view.
Can you remember it? You formed.
Oh, I can remember it so clearly that I remember anything in my life.
Like this whole idea of the ego sort of being a human thing.
Right.
And you were outside of that. And
Oh, I think so. Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. That was left out here on the planet. In fact, we have so many levels of existence. We're just existing on one little section of our own tour through infinity, which means it doesn't end, and it didn't begin. It's just in this time and space here, it seemed like it began 13.5 billion years ago. And we began 69 years ago. I don't know, y'all are probably all younger, but the creative process always was. We just break it down into time.
So your original experience in 1977, did it subdued over the years or rather rapidly, or is any of that?
The power and insight it gave me has increased from that day forward. There are certainly times I went through other bouts of depression until I finally, actually I didn't realize I was bipolar till 2000. I came back from Europe. All my stuff was with friends in Kerrville. And when I was a star in Copenhagen and came back to Kerrville, Texas, and because I can't square dance, I can't get a date, I thought, boy, am I in the wrong world, you know? So I went through another bout of depression in 2000, but I realized that I'm learning more about it. When you realize your weaknesses, your faults, the bad notes you play in music, you can change them. You can make progress. Did I avoid your question or answer it? I kind of got off here.
Yeah, but the question was really that ultra strong experience you had, it didn't persist till today, or it did, or
it's controllable today. I still feel a lot of things, and I consciously ask the world every day to give me signs. I do. I have what I call my Fantastic Four. And I got this idea about 5 or 6 years ago. I saw on TV Fantastic Four, and I thought, what are my Fantastic Four? And I was raised Catholic, so my Fantastic Four are Jesus, my mom and my dad, which raised 7 sons, and I have a high respect for them. Some of our brothers thought they drank a little bit too much, but I probably would too if I had 7 boys. And this lady, Alice, who basically, I met this lady in 1980, and she taught me her method of reading stones. She's the most gifted psychic I've ever met. She was incredibly gifted. But she had problems with a lot of things on the physical realm. Her car was never working. Her kids were dysfunctional. She was behind on rent sometimes. Sweetest, most beautiful, loving, giving, caring lady ever. So since I met her in 1980, I always help her with her cars and her kids, whatever I could. And she'd always say, oh, Gary, I can't pay you back. And I said, Alice, all I want from you is when you pass over, become my guide. I really want that. I will pay anything I can now to get that. And I feel her all the time. When I do readings, I put this little medal that she used to wear right next to me, pointing in a certain direction. So you can create your own system of empowering yourself. Mine was my Fantastic Four. Yeah, I still have good intuition, but I can cut it off. I can watch TV. I cannot be overwhelmed by the up-to-the-date millisecond of the universe, which at the time I was. I couldn't think about normal things. I didn't know what I would be doing if this wasn't overtaking me and escalating up to the point of the car crash. And it took, like I said, months to kind of taper off. But am I aware of what I saw? Absolutely. And year by year, it makes more sense to me. Because it was probably, 1985 or 87 or something, that the term near-death experience, I started hearing it. And I'm going, oh, other people had these, huh? You know. I didn't tell too many people around me that other than people I had to. Police, ambulance, family, judge, cops, psychiatrists. Well, there was a fair amount of people I had to explain it to, actually. But I didn't go to any depth because I thought, who's going to believe me? I can't prove it. And it sounds crazy. And then I started realizing, no, other people have had similar experiences. I can't imagine I'd be the only one. And what the hell did I possibly do to deserve this beautiful voyage? And I found that out too.
Aside from the emotional vulnerability that was attached to this, did you find that the kind of paranormal sensitivities that you got continued? Did you lose some, get some others? Did you lose the ones you didn't practice? How has that part of your experience gone?
Whether you're driving or playing the piano or having sex, practice makes perfect. It really does, in everything in life. I've gained abilities in some areas because they seem more important to me and I work on them more. I probably lost some abilities in other areas. For example, I don't read throw cards anymore. I used to a long time ago, but once I learned this method, I thought I'll just stick with this. And I use regular playing cards. I don't have to remember anything. So yeah, I guess some have tapered off and some have escalated, but it's manageable now. And that's the main thing. I can turn it on and turn it off. And I'll take being, not 100% perfect right about everything versus having overwhelming absolute certainty happen 24 hours a day that I can't turn off. That was a relief that it finally tapered off, whether it was through the medication or time or whatever. But I think the degree of which someone can learn the things there are to know, how much you can bring to yourself by conscious choice. You got to ask the universe to help you grow, and it will. You don't ask, you'll get a little help, but the universe is not going to force its way upon you.
Where was your life heading before all this happened to you, do you think?
Pardon me?
Where was your life heading before all this happened to you, do you think?
Oh, I didn't know. This happened when I was 29. I'm 69 now. It's over 40 years ago. I was just trying to make a living playing music, because I was graduating college in 70, and this was 1977. I realized I'm getting older, and it's hard to make a living, and I better do something. So I was planning on making a living playing music, hopefully find better gigs. Turned out once I learned to play the piano, I learned to be a soloist. Still a crappy singer, but I can make people laugh, so that's good. Because audiences care about it if they have a good time. They don't care how many notes you hit.
Do you do shows now?
Pardon me?
Do you do any shows here in Austin?
No, I quit performing about 5 or 6 years ago because of back pain. I'm a little bit dated. I do readings full time. I can work on a Tuesday afternoon, don't have to wait till 5 o'clock Friday or whatever.
Gary, on that note, when you say you give readings, are your readings concerning the past, present, or future, or all the above?
This particular style, I guess the best way I can explain it, because everybody has a unique gift, psychic perspective. I tend to see what's going on in people's lives and why and what it's leading toward. I don't promise someone by March they're going to have a new boyfriend named Joe, unless I know that. And I have a lot of people call me and say, well, this lady told me I was supposed to find the soulmate of my life, and it's supposed to be in January, and you're supposed to be a blonde-haired guy. Well, I wouldn't tell you that, because I don't want you to set yourself up that unless I meet the blonde-haired guy in January, there ain't nobody for me. And maybe the hair color was wrong. So yeah, I tend to see what people are going through and why. Was that what you asked?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, other people have a different system. And I think the reason I see what people are going through and why is because I've asked that question so much. I've always felt like, look, I can work out the details, God, if you just tell me I'm still halfway sane, or I'm still somewhat in the right ballpark or headed the right direction, I don't need all the details. Just once in a while, I'll say, yep, keep going. Good, okay.
When you were growing up in your younger years before 29, can you think back and think, I was feeling some of this at a younger age?
Oh, absolutely.
I just didn't recognize it?
Absolutely. My 2 older brothers, and I was saying this a while ago, had a profound effect on me. And my mother used to mention this. She'd say, Gary, they'd be out, they fought from the day they were born. They were double and a triple Sagittarius, exactly your part. The oldest one says, oh, he's upset because he thinks he should be oldest. He's Freudian psychology. And one younger than him said, he's always screwed up and he's manipulating people. And they're both right. They're both kind of, they're good people. But I grew up watching them battle. And my mother used to say they'd be playing and they'd come over, they get bored and come over to where you are and you'd go off by yourself. So I had never wanted to get dragged into the macho stuff. I never have. I didn't play sports. I go home. You know, I get beat up by a brother. What do I need sports for, you know? So yeah, way back young, I would always see things like in my brothers or something that this is gonna screw up. I could just feel it. We've all had that feeling. You know, the ball's rolling off toward the end of the table, 99% chance it's gonna roll off the table. And some people don't even look at it that way. And they're, well, it rolled off the table. Couldn't you see it coming? So yeah, I felt that to some degree. And I think most people do. The point is you can get better at it. You can practice seeing more, understanding more. You can never set yourself up to where you'll miss all life's curveballs. Nope, you're going to get them. But the more practice you have at bat, the more you know how to deal with a curveball. Get a bigger bat, or don't swing, or don't be suckered in. Or throw 3 more, jerk, and I'll get a free base. You know? So yeah, I felt it way young. I couldn't put my finger on it until I started learning about intuition, and Edgar Cayce made a lot of sense to me. When I read that, it's like, wow, all of a sudden, Jesus Christ and reincarnation and other religions and the pyramids and all this stuff started making sense to me. Of course, how much is true, I don't know, because there's a lot of stuff that's not provable, you know. But yeah, I started feeling stuff way young, and my own curiosity made me want to learn more about it. So I was active at wanting to develop my skill at that area. Some people don't. Some people want to have a big car lot and sell a bunch of Chevys. That's just, to me, it's just blockage. I don't want to do that crap. I've never been interested in running a business or trying to accumulate money. I'm really an artist. If I can live on today and do good things and play music and give a reading and learn something new, that's fine. I don't need to go out and set up a business and try to see how much money I can make. It bores me, to be honest with you. But the intuitive side, I've always been interested in that. And we all have a certain native, small interest in that. But when you bring your interest up to the surface more, and you realize you can practice and you can develop more skill, I say do it. Because you get more tools to work in the universe. If we're limited by what we know and what we can see and what we've experienced, that's fine, but we don't have to stay limited to that. Like I said, the more you develop your intuition and your sixth sense and your spirit and your determination every day to erase the crap off yesterday's blackboard, not drag the skeletons into tomorrow's closet, choices and decisions and techniques, that's a lot of life. And I chose to develop it. So I was always asking for more insight. It's probably why I never would make a good banker or businessman. I don't give a shit about that, to be honest with you. I want to know how the mind works, how the soul works, why we're here. That's always been of interest to me, primary interest.
So you say practice psychic abilities, but how would you do that? Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I do. For example, I've talked to a couple people in readings in the last year or so, and say you got a job on commission and you go in every day and it's a blah day. It doesn't have to be a blah day. If you've got people that are going to buy stuff and your job is to close the deal and sell it, they're already intentioned to buy it. Vow your mind in the morning every day that I'm going to sell $50 extra worth, $100 extra. Vow yourself that when you have a problem or an issue and you can't put your finger on it, that the universe is going to show you some information. It may be a phone call, it may be a number, a color, a coincidence, but when you ask the universe to help you do that, you start learning your own resonance. You start learning how you pick up signs. There are no coincidences in life. There really aren't. There's cause and there's effect. And we are the result of cause and effect. What we see in life is more often the results, the effects, and the causes. We don't even know the cause of the Big Bang or why God decided to be here in infinite and make everything be here as opposed to nothing. But yeah, curiosity, practice, thinking outside the box. There's 10,000 books you can read on it, but a lot of it you can learn by just deciding to say, okay, universe, I'm ready to learn how to read the signs. Start showing me some. Because the universe, we are one with it. Infinite mind and us are one. We just forget it. We're so preoccupied in our own separate existence and our own burdens of our own crosses. But the more we ask the universe to show us, give us more information, the more we get. But you have to ask. That I felt very sure about when I saw my own body being smashed up by the car. It's sort of like, that's just what happens on Earth. And your guardian angels, your soul guides, they will help. But the more you ask, the more you give permission, and they're not interfering with your choice or lack thereof or free will. So it's proactive. Growth is a proactive thing, you know. Mm-hmm.
Any predictions about big changes in the near future?
Oh, I wrote in this book,
$1 million question.
I saw the next 100 years of life in this world, in this country. And I saw some of it already come true. As I was collapsing back into my body, I saw these like flashcards of things, including some of myself that I didn't recognize at the time. But I saw political, social upheaval, a lot of things with the ecology, and you know, it's just an intense time we're going through. But it's not in vain. You know, mankind has to learn to raise its consciousness. And we do, and oftentimes we learn to raise our consciousness not when we're out on a yacht with a martini, getting laid. No, it's when we're working on something, when we have a challenge. We have to grow, we have to evolve. And you can see all around, whether it's societies or cultures or our systems are breaking down. They're outdated. They're not working effectively. Either people are not smart enough to get them to update them, or they don't have the political power to, or whatever. But that's changing. I'm a complete optimist. I really am. But we're going to see a lot in our lifetimes and our kids' lifetimes. Geological change, earth change, climate change. There will be a lot of starvation. There's not enough food and water. Well, there is, but it's the distribution. There's plenty for everybody. It's the distribution that's off base. But through a lot of changes that humankind will go through in the next 50, 100 years, we will inhabit space. We will have peace on Earth. We will all be very highly evolved and be able to pick up thoughts and feelings with our intuition. We're headed that direction. It's just we got to clear all this selfishness and crap and dysfunctionality and hate out of the way first. And you can't clear it out if you don't recognize it. And now we're starting to really clearly recognize it. So I'm an optimist. You know, the crap's starting to stink, so we can go locate it and take it back outside or wherever, right? So yeah, it's a we got a lot of surprises ahead in the next 100 years, but it's a progression. I do think the United States is going to change a lot geographically. You know, I saw a lot of the east and west coast radically different. I can't put a time on it.
Is it due to geological events?
Pardon me?
Geological events like California dropping off?
How much is written in stone, I don't know. How much is destined to happen? I know that that some of the things that can happen not only from geological things, but the Earth is changing its poles, you know. There's a lot of things going on that are unpreventable. Climate change, we can prevent, but where's the will to? Especially now, unfortunately. So yeah, we're going through a lot of changes, and it's intense. But the Earth will heal itself. We may just eliminate a lot of ourselves in the process, but we will we will inhabit space. We'll take over the solar system. We'll learn how to get free energy. Somewhere between gravity and magnetism that's always around the planet. I saw this. I don't know the formula, but there's free energy right there. We're starting to realize how much free solar energy there is. It just takes a lot of space. But when we learn to use gravity and quantum physics and the Earth's magnetism together, incredible power sources here. We just hadn't figured out how to tap into them yet. We're still burning gas, you know. But I'm an optimist. Any other question?
Did you have any more out-of-body experiences?
Not like that.
Practices?
Not like that. I've had some. I've certainly had some experiences both through meditation and through dreams. One is this kind of a meditation, kind of a dream, kind of an out of body. But I was living in this world where no two people could speak the same language. You could only look at people and say that they're hungry, or they don't have clothes, or they need to be sheltered. You know, the basic needs are obvious. We can look at people and see that. But the fact that no two people could conspire together on a third meant you couldn't do anything wrong to anybody. You could only help people. And this world with no two people speaking the same language was in absolute peace because nobody could conspire against each other. I got a lot of, and that was a dream, but I start to realize that that's where we're headed. You know, I had an interesting dream one time that I was playing music and had all these people in front of me entertained, and my jokes were working and everything, and felt real good. And someone came over through that door over there, and I wasn't even going to look. Not going to give them my space and time. Not going to acknowledge them. Kept playing, and I noticed people started paying attention to this other person. And that person started playing the same songs I'm playing and started telling the same jokes. And it's copied my whole routine a millisecond before I can. And I'm getting real upset and frustrated. I think, who the hell is this? And I look over, and it's me. My own worst competition is myself, you know. So I get a lot of visions and dreams, and I feel things a lot. I knew when Obama walked up to the in 2008 when he won, and he walked up to the podium, as clearly as I'm talking to you, I heard the word 2 terms. I knew right then that he was going to absolutely serve 2 terms. There was just no doubt of it in my mind.
How about Trump?
Pardon me?
How about Trump?
Yeah.
How about Trump? She's
Oh. This is an aberration like no other. It really is. And it's gonna. I don't see how he can do 4 years personally. No, I don't. I think they're gonna try and get Pence in, or he's gonna have a heart attack. I could be wrong, but I think it's his karma to have to face all the bullshit that he's put out, and he has. And what better way to face it than being the president of the country and having everybody not too thrilled at you? Because all this guy wants to be is loved and respected and bowed to. You know, he's got a pretty simple, childish ego. I mean, looking at his tweets and everything. So yeah, I think it's a wake-up call for us in the world. No, I was not expecting him to win. I really wasn't.
I did.
Yeah, well, some people certainly did. Maybe it was naivety, and I have to admit, for a long time I couldn't imagine him winning just because I had more faith in the world. Well, now I realize sort of why he won, because it's going to really put gas on the fire of awareness, of change, of growth, of wait a minute, we can't have every country hate us, you know. And again, you can fix the holes in the boat when you know where the holes are, when you realize them. So
Yeah,
we're
but
getting.
What about the roots of the racism in this country that elected me?
Oh, it's pathetic.
That's not going to go away.
No,
How can that be?
it will change in time. People do change. Yeah, I mean, remember we used to have slavery here, justified by good old Christians, and you know, we still have a lot of unequalness in life and unfairness. I'm an optimist. This too shall pass, but it's going to shift things into higher gear. But it's going to raise our consciousness by a lot. Look in just 1 month, how much human consciousness has changed. We're starting to rise, right? I mean, it's like, oh God, this guy really is at the helm. You know, it's unbelievable to most of the world too, and most Americans. And but again, this is part of the process. if we didn't realize how dysfunctional some things were, we couldn't fix them. This is kind of like an overdose on that lesson, but it won't be ignored. You know.
Thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I mean,
Really helpful.
well, I look at the universe, and I suggest everybody do this. It's a matter of practice. The one thing you can always decide, no matter what's going on, is the universe is enlightening you instead of screwing with you. And when you choose to see it enlightening you instead of screwing with you, guess what? You'll see what's actually going on. If you choose to see that life is screwing with you or Donald Trump or anything, that's the kind of glasses you got on. That's the way you'll see things. That's the way you'll feel. Allow yourself to always see the beauty and good in things. And I'm a hardcore anti-Trump, you know, probably more than most people. But at the same vein, spiritually, I try to get above it. I can only do the best I can do with people I care about.
Milo.
Well, fucking nutcase in 2 words. You know, he wants to get popular and get a lot of money, and he's figured out how to milk the cow. Although coming out here today, I heard he lost a book deal and lost a lot of stuff, so his little, you know, bitchiness ain't working. I think he overestimated his cuteness or whatever.
There's something wrong with that boy.
Well, look at the president. Something wrong with that boy, too. There's, you know, there's challenges, but be an optimist, folks. Be an optimist. Because the more you think in terms of optimism, the more you can actually see the damn roses instead of the thorns. They're all there. But which do you want to have your life run by? Were you going to ask something, brother?
No.
Oh, okay.
Okay, any other burning questions? A couple things. Gary has books for sale, right?
Correct.
Very good, Gary.
Thank you so much, my man. Quite an honor. Thank you, folks.